So we're just coming up to the top of the hour, so I'd just like to start today's webinar, which is delivering a consistent multi-channel customer experience, which I think is going to be a fascinating topic, one that's certainly very topical. I think it's been very easy in the past to sort of add a couple of channels onto the contact center, adding on a bit of email, maybe putting a little application like Hootsuite to do a bit of social. But I think it's getting to the point where the market's starting to burst at the seams. So I'd like to introduce to you two very good panelists. I'm delighted to join with us today. Maria McCann from Yoho Ventures, is how you pronounce it?
Yoho Ventures.
Yoho Ventures. And Maria, you're going to be taking us from omni-channels up to omnipresent, achieving consistency in an omni-channel world. Now, I know you've worked in quite a number of organizations. I think I first came across you when you were at Spotify.
That's
doing
right,
some
yes.
quite clever things there.
Yes, I think my work has always been primarily in the digital space, and then more recently helping retailers fuse the physical and the digital world. So we're starting to get into that omni-channel world, and I'm really interested to explore, whether we are omni-shambles or whether we're kind of heading towards that omnipresent view of living in our customers' pockets. I'll be interested to see what the what your listeners think of that.
Wonderful. And then we'll be doing our normal top tips and questions, and then we'll be handing over to Mary-Ann Miller from New Voice Media. Welcome to you, Mary-Ann.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
And you'll be talking us through how to deliver a personalised omni-channel experience. So
exactly. So I mean, my view on this is there's different tools required by the different players in this scenario, and the players being the agent, the customer, and the business, and how do we cater for all of them and give them what they need.
Wonderful. Well, if you could log into the bit of housekeeping, if you could log into the chat room, you can leave tips and questions in the chat room, and we do have a bottle of champagne or a box of chocolates for the best tip, and I'll be asking Maria if you could just immediately after the call pick the winning tip, which we then will put out onto our Twitter account and announce the winner there. There's a lot of detail that we'll be going through. If you want to share it with your teams or with your senior management, a replay will be available on the same link as you've dialed into later on today. And then there'll be a write-up of today's webinar, which will be sent out to you by New Voice Media immediately after the webinar, or in a few days' time. So callcenterhelper.com/chat if you'd like to log in, and just a reminder, if you want the webinar slides, once you're logged into the chat room, it's this link here, so we'll get the details up on the screen. But before we get into the agenda, I'd just like to start off with a couple of polls, and I'd just like to understand which channels do you operate today. So if you'd just like to select all of the channels that you operate today in your contact center, it'd be quite interesting to see the results on that. Do you think it's going to be a very large percentage of web chat, Maria?
I think it could be. It's certainly the businesses that I work with, it's a channel that they're really interested in, both from a cost and efficiency perspective, but also the value that is perceived to be delivered back to the customer as well. So it's a fast, efficient way to actually bond with a customer quite quickly and solve their problems. So yeah, I think chat could be up there.
Well, let's have a look at the results we've got coming through. 100% of people are using the phone, as perhaps you would expect. 97% are using email. 52% web chat. Quite surprisingly, 68% using standard service mail, and 60% using social media. 60% seems quite low, Mary-Ann. I would have expected probably to see a bit higher than that.
Well, I wonder whether they've interpreted the question as, are we using it as a channel for, say, customer service? Maybe they've interpreted that as, are we almost using it to promote our brand? Do you think?
Yeah, it could well be. Well, let's have a look and see if that's going to change in the near future. So if you'd just like to say, what is the next channel that you're intending to bring into your contact center? I've assumed that everyone has phones, so we're taking that one off. So the options are email, web chat, social media, video chat, and mobile apps. If you've got any other ones, if you'd like to put them into the chat room, Emma says, we use social media but not as a channel. So I guess that might mean the marketing department still owns social media within the organisation. So let's have a look at, we've got most people voted in so far, so let's just have a look at the results, and I'll just close the poll here and share the results. Now this is interesting.
Yeah.
So we're seeing that mobile apps is the next channel that's likely to, I don't know if it's a channel or a delivery mechanism, to come into the organisation. 48% bring that in. 47% web chat, 31% social media. That pretty well complements the 60% who already have it. And 26% video chat. That's quite a surprise to see there. Email quite low, I think, probably again because most people already have that. Maria, any surprises on that? I was a bit surprised on mobile apps.
I'm not surprised. I'm pleased around mobile apps because, you know, in my world, that's really the bridge between, you know, the customer, and that's the next bridge between the customer and the brand is through an app that sits on their phone, sits in the pocket of the customer at all times. And there's, you know, numerous opportunities for both parties that can be derived from that. Video chat is a surprise, a pleasant one. And web chat is no surprise at all.
So I've got a question I'd like to put into the chat room. In 5 years' time, what do you think will be the channel of choice? So if you in the audience would like to put that in. Let's have a look back at some of the other channels that people are using. Emma says we use social media, but not as a channel. And Sue says we respond to social media rather than to use it to best advantage. And Hannah says we're looking at virtual IVRs for mobile phones, which divert to an advisor where appropriate. So
visual IVRs,
yeah, could be quite interesting. So let's have a look at what's likely to happen in 5 months' time. Hannah says I work with a council, and the communication teams are responsible for managing their social media channels. Ideally, they sit within customer services. So what's going to happen in 5 years' time? Social media is the prediction, channel of choice. Channel of choice, Christine says mobile apps. Everyone loves their smartphones, as does David. Amy thinks it'll either be social media as chat, as people receive an instant reply, instant gratification. Frederick, phone will still be the biggest channel. I think that's my personal take. Amy thinks it's mobile apps. Tace thinks it's apps or phones with complex inquiries. Let's have a look. Stephanie thinks, I think most people will be looking for text or mobile apps, whatever is the quickest way to communicate. I think
I'm wondering if there's going to be any kind of convergence of the channels. So for example, if we're saying mobile apps is where it's at, you know, I could be chatting with you via a web chat on my mobile. I could then seamlessly, let's hope, switch to a phone call or a video chat. Convergence would be amazing at that point, to be able to switch the conversation onto the right channel.
Yeah. And I think there's a danger we're in the sort of golden day of web chat right now, because on most companies there's quite a long queue in the call center. Emails can take days to get answered. And web chat you can typically get through in about 5 seconds now. I wonder, as the call volume or the web chat volumes grow, whether we're slightly in a sort of false environment where things won't be handled quite so quickly. So it looks like, mobile app and web chat seem to be the winners of what's likely to come up as the channel of choice in the future. So I'd just like to pass the baton across to Maria McCann from Yoho Ventures, and Maria's going to be taking us through a presentation about how to move from omni-shambles to omnipresent. So Maria, if you could take us through your little bit of your background and through your presentation, would be useful to see.
Thanks, Jonty. So from my perspective, I've worked in customer service and in the digital space for over 8 years now, and launching customer service propositions for companies like ASOS and Spotify, and really learning some great and also some painful lessons along the way. And now what I do is I spend my days with a team of practitioners, technologists, data scientists, and what we try to do is really work with brands to deliver micro transformations or marginal gains in both their customer engagement and also their people, because the two are often very aligned. And we use data, we use information, and we use technology to do that. And so what we get to do is we get to see and work with some great brands, but we also get to see some of the pain points that that they're going through as well. And so when we kind of talk about omni-channel, it seems to be a buzzword that's been increasing. What do we actually mean by that? Well, we've taken a bit of a stab at trying to kind of get a visual representation up and running. And really, for me, when we talk about multi-channel, we're talking about kind of single points of contact with a customer that may or may not be integrated. And when we talk about omni-channel, actually what we're talking about is if a channel is available somewhere, then any channel should be available to that customer. It doesn't necessarily mean every channel should be available to that customer, but as brands we need to be thinking about where our customers are and making it really easy for them to interact with us and perhaps each other as well. And then all of that data, all of that information that we gather and harvest should actually come back to one customer record instead of being siloed as it often is at the moment. So a practical example is, when we cross over our channels, often we might have to re-authenticate the customer again. We might have to, if we're talking to a customer on social and we want them to come off into a more private space, we don't lead that customer towards that space. We ask them then to kind of email us or chat with us or call this number. So we're still putting the customer to that effort, and that's multi-channel. The other thing about when we try to visualize this is actually we stripped out a lot of the channels. So you'll notice there's no social, there's no kind of community, there's no web chat in there, because what we're finding is that the brands that we work with are getting so focused on a micro channel when actually what we're really talking about is text. That could mean SMS, that could mean web chat, that could mean social. When we're talking about the physical space, is that a store, is that an office, is that pop-up shops? When we're talking about voice, is that an 033 number, is that in-device? And when we're talking about video, is that pre-recorded video, is that something that, videos that customers are uploading, or is that live video interaction? And so what we're finding is that if we can actually just take it up a level and just talk about this in terms of the media rather than the physical channel, then what we find is when we get to the purpose of having each of those micro channels, we've got a much better starting point. So I would say that omni-channel, being where your customer is here. It's already here, and we need to absolutely be considering that. It's also getting bigger. I use this little tool all the time. It's Google Trends. You can put in any search terms like cat videos or Barack Obama, and you can kind of compare trends. And in fact, cat videos are trending better than Barack Obama right now.
Oh, right.
So there you go. So I put in omni-channel.
Cat videos is what the internet was invented for.
It absolutely is. So I mean, I put in omni-channel into Google Trends, and you can see this absolute flat line up until about 2012 when we start. When all these different media and different channels are, customers are kind of attacking the brands, and us with this, and it's just going up and up and up. So I think, omni-channel, however we want to describe it, is here, and it's simply just getting bigger. What I wanted to also do is bring in a bit of a backdrop against service. So if we know that the channels of contact that we want to be are where our customers are, then how are our businesses viewing service as a value proposition? And I did a piece of work with the Economist Insight Unit recently, and they did a very in-depth study with businesses in the UK, and the outputs of that study around service are that these businesses are expecting service to be the primary competing factor by 2020. I'd argue that's probably already happening now, but above product, above cost, above value, it's about the service experience that customers are getting. Interestingly, they also highlighted it as a big barrier to success, and that was really around the complexity of what customers are asking for and demanding now, and also the skill sets of the staff that we have. So the roles that will be available in a few years' time have probably not even, we haven't even thought of those yet. You know, if we think back 5 years, you know, the roles that we're trying to, you know, some of the roles that are in our businesses now were not invented 5 years ago, and so we'll continue going through that change.
And it's quite fascinating to see on the bottom of there, quite a large thing there, lack of qualified staff, and two up from it, lack of investment in staff training. So it looks like there's
definite correlation.
Yeah, it seems to be we're not investing in staff enough to deliver this experience.
And I think for contact centres, anybody that's looking to present their contact centre as a value rather than a cost proposition need to be trying to make that correlation of skills and knowledge. You know, how is that valued in the business, and then the value that then has to customers, because it is, you know, it is there. We just need to try and make the link to it.
And it is really kind of obvious, isn't it, that if we can't differentiate our product or our service, if we can't differentiate ourselves, we're going to be differentiated on price, and that way lies going out of business.
Yeah, I mean, it's a race to the bottom then, isn't it, really? Yeah. Just some of the stats around that whole idea that customers are expecting us to be where they are. You know, took these from various sources, but when we're looking at online shoppers, you know, nearly 70% are using multiple channels to interact with customers. So as brands, how are we thinking, or as organisations, how are we actually moving those customers across those channels? What information are we able to gather and harvest about those interactions, and how can we use that information to benefit both our organisation and also the customer as well? Another sort of stat I'd pick out would be the speed of response, speed of resolution, and the kind of character of the advisor being highlighted as the most important factors for customers. What was interesting for me was that speed of resolution didn't necessarily equate to first-time resolution. So it could be that a customer might be comfortable with a few interactions, but as long as that speed is there, that was definitely a keyword that I picked up on.
And certainly on web chat, we're starting to see issues with speed coming through. It's sort of when agents are doing 3 at the same time, it can be quite slow. In fact, there's a comment in from Kate says it's very frustrating from a customer's perspective when you're typing on live chat and the other person can't type quick enough. So you end up thinking it would have been better phoning. So I think speed really is a critical factor.
Absolutely key. Yeah.
I've certainly had a couple of my larger customers, really significant blue chip names, say to me, you know, we rely on hero management, so we've got some amazing staff that cover the fact that our systems and processes are broken underneath.
That is a very, very interesting point, and a lot of the work that we do, I mean, we specialise in what I would call micro transformations or marginal gains. It's about what is the 1% and 2%, you know, that if we multiplied them up would give organisations a great return, but that can be delivered really, really quickly and really effectively. And, you know, it's the old adage of how do you eat an elephant? Well, you know, one bit at a time, really. But what we try to do is kind of deliver that in multiple ways. And we're seeing that being much more effective than a long transformation over 2 or 3 years where, you know, you're not going to see your gains in another 3, you know, for another maybe year, because by that point the world's moved on again. And the process and technology aspects are key in coming through on that, definitely. So I think we've got a poll.
Yeah, we're going to jump across to a poll now, and the question is, what are the main risks of adding a new channel? The main risks that we've identified here are managing customer expectations, resources to handle demand from the new channel, investment is too much upfront, or you've got a very long return on investment, delivering an inconsistent customer experience, or the project fails and you never end up doing it. So what are the biggest risks of adding a new channel? If you just perhaps let's select the top 3 of those, or up to 3 choices on that one. So we'll just have a look at the results there. So I think we've got a couple more votes to just to come through there. Maria, which ones do you think are likely to come top of that list?
Oh, it could be any of them, to be honest. I think possibly the risks. You know, a lot of the brand work that I do is around how do we manage customer expectations, which I guess links into that inconsistent, you know, being a risk out of that, and then, you know, resources, which ends up being that you end up investing kind of too much in it, more than you planned.
Well, let's have a look at the results. Sample size for this is 165. So top is resources to handle demand, 65%, followed 56% inconsistent customer experience, 48% managing customer expectations, 30% investing too much upfront with a long return on investment, and I think this is quite good. Only 25% say the project fails, you never end up doing it. So I think within contact center projects, we've got a much higher success rate now, as most of the audience don't fear failure from implementing a new channel. I guess we've probably done it already on a number, so it gets easier as we get more under the belt. May I add any surprises in there?
Well, I was thinking it was going to be inconsistent customer experience, because I generally see people implement a new channel in a silo, but actually it makes a lot of sense that it is the resources to handle demand, because you become a victim of your own success. Suddenly people see you've got a web chat channel and they come rushing in and you haven't skilled up or given yourself enough resources to handle that channel, and then you disappoint them.
When I was at ASOS, we were one of the first retailers to launch social, Twitter, as a customer service channel, and Facebook as well. And I think when we did it back in 2008, so Hootsuite, you know, a lot of the tools weren't invented then, and we must have got shut down by Facebook probably once a month, because they thought that we were spamming lots of people because we were interacting with them and private messaging them, and we you know, I certainly didn't anticipate the demand that took off. But I think with a lot of contact centres, you know, they're got very agile people and very responsive talent within them. So,
and for fashion, that's great, isn't it? Facebook and Twitter, you can share the pictures. You can say, "How do I look in this?" What would you?
Yeah, completely on brand. Completely on brand. Yeah. So. I guess kind of then just thinking around if we've got risks to managing these channels, you know, sometimes it is a bit omni-shambles, you know, why do we sometimes fail? And all I've done here is taken my kind of personal, you know, lessons that I've learned over the last 8 years working in companies or working with companies that are in some kind of hyper-growth or hyper change, and I've really put them down into 3 pots. So sometimes we're too slow, we think too much, maybe we put governance and process over collaboration and execution. Sometimes we're too fractured, so it goes back to that point about being siloed, and sometimes we're just a bit too self-centered. So what we do sometimes, you know, if we've been talking about web chat today, is we determine the channel that we think, or the pages of the website that we think the chat should be on, that might benefit us as a business, but may not benefit the customer. And so, you know, within retail, we may put chat on product pages that we want to push the product or we want to sell. But then when the customer comes back onto the site, that channel isn't there for them anymore, and we're starting to then deliver that slightly inconsistent experience. I know a telecoms company that really got gamed by a lot of their customers when they launched the iPhone 6, because that was the only place that they put chat on. And so any customer wanting to chat with that brand outside of that, if they weren't looking for an iPhone 6, soon quickly realised that if they just went onto the iPhone 6 product page and hovered there for a little while, then somebody would come on. So just sort of wrapping up really, how do we, if we're trying to get to omni-channel, what are we kind of thinking about beyond omni-channel? Well, for me it boils down into 3 areas. How do we start to become omnipresent? So we talk about apps and mobile devices. How do we as organisations start to live in our customers' pockets and serving up the right information at the right time, leading into becoming actually more telepathic? So how are we using information and data about our customers and actually collaborating with, our customers on the data that we're gathering with them? Is this right about you? Have we got it right here? To then serving up information and services and things that will be of use to that customer ahead of time, going to your point, Marianne, about being proactive. And then how do we become more collaborative, both inside our businesses, so we're all facing the same way to the customer, and also collaborative with our customers. So how do we break down some of those barriers? So how do we harness some of the knowledge that sits within our customers themselves, and then start to use that to the benefit of other customers and also for the benefit of our organisations as well. So I hope that that's been a useful kind of walkthrough, and it's been really fun kind of putting it together and thinking about it.
Wonderful, thank you for that, Maria. I think that's great. Some of those points. So for the audience, here's 3 key learning points. Well, they're all questions, so very much tied in with that. How do we start to live in our customers' pockets? That would be quite an interesting one. If anyone's got any ideas, if you want to pop them in the chat room. How do we become more telepathic, thinking ahead of what the customer is? Because I think one of the dangers we have is that the customer tends to, certainly in a service environment, the customer still owns the problem, not the company. And how do we become more collaborative? We talked on the run-up about actually how do we bring customers in, for instance, into a service environment, get them collaborating on forums and so on. On a sales front, how do we get the customers actually acting as advocates and working and influencing purchase decisions on our behalf? So I think there's some fabulous examples in there. Thank you very much for that, Maria. Well, we're now going to jump across and we're going to have a look at some top tips and questions that have come in from the audience. If you want to raise a question, if you're not already logged into the chat room, it's callcenterhelper.com/chat, and if you can use hashtag tip if you've got a tip, or hash question if you've got a question. So let's have a look at some of the ones that have come through. Carol has said, for delivering consistent multi-channel experience, it's important to know what channel the customer prefers. So first is personalization, use preferred channels by the customer. It should flow something like this. Catch the client on a web page, chat with them, send him an offer by a mobile app or mail, and keep track and remind. So a sort of whole process flow there. And James says, I think to deliver a consistent multi-channel experience for your customer, your agents need to take ownership of each contact they receive so they can move the customer seamlessly from one channel to another. And Maria, I guess this is your whole thing about talking about omni-channel rather than multi-channel.
Absolutely. Omni-channel doesn't need to be in big macro form. It can simply be the act of seamlessly moving a customer from one channel to another by someone in your company, hand-holding that customer so that they're not put to any effort at all, just led there, and it's beautiful, elegant experience for them.
And I guess whether we choose to do it or not, our customers certainly are. Steve has said it's not enough to know a customer has or is interacting in multiple channels. You need to understand what they're trying to achieve in each channel and use that information to personalize the future or real-time interactions across the channels.
Absolutely.
Very similar.
You've got to use what you know.
Yeah, some points by Carl here. In any job, you get what you pay for. Too long, companies hired people based on what we can pay them rather than the skills they have. And if you don't pay them enough, once you do upskill them, they move to a company that pays better. I guess there's a bit of a catch-22.
People behave as they are gone.
A number of techniques, but quite an interesting one here from Mark. The key is to look at literacy skills during the recruitment process, and also build as many pre-written messages as possible.
It's interesting, isn't it? I know through working with one customer in the past that they found the agents really loved the web chat, and the reason they loved it was because they had the time to be able to compose a response and think about what they were saying rather than being on the phone and being perhaps put on the back foot. It actually reduced the stress on the agents.
Well, here, along the cost line, here's a question from Vishal. It says, is delivering digital omni-channel experience to customers also considered as an opportunity for downsizing employee base in contact centres? For example, Lloyds Bank cutting back on jobs as many of their customers using digital channels for communication. Do you think that's a realistic prospect?
I don't, and I don't because I think that the skills required to handle, as I think one of your audience said, it's about identifying the problem and solving the problem. As the problems become more complex, or the goals of the customer become more complex, it will start to require more complex skills to deal with them. Having said that, I do think that technology costs are becoming, more and more valuable, all the time. But I'd go back to, the beginning of when we were talking about, do we see our contact centres as a cost centre, or do we see them as a value generating centre? And that will kind of drive a lot of the decision making.
Yeah, there's certainly a number of comments that have come through. Here's a couple of opinions from the audience. David said the downside of web chat is the need for impeccable English to present a professional image, which is very similar. A considerable number of existing telephony advisors may not have this skill. And I guess, with web chat in particular, there's a temptation to be able to move that across to India or the Philippines because the accent may not be so strongly. But certainly, it's the same thing about impeccable writing skills. Might be quite an interesting one. On a similar note, Amy says we have multi-channel and our agents are fully trained across all channels, which works well. However, managing the balance between them can be difficult with a small team. Different channels have different speed expectations. Marianne, how do you tie in the different speed expectations of channels?
I'd like to say thank you to Amy for that question, because we're going to cover some of that in my presentation. And absolutely, blended agents, I think, is the way forward. It makes a more fulfilling job for the agent, and you just need to make sure you've given them the tools to empower them to do that well.
So we'll just take two more tips before we hand across to Marianne for her thoughts on that. Emma says, focus on the channels that your customers want, not what you think they want, which is an interesting one. What's difficult to tell is, what is the demand for mobile applications going to be? I think there's not enough empiric evidence on that one to put that, unless you've seen any stats on that, Maria.
So, I mean, mobile apps are increasingly becoming part of the customers' lives. And I think what we need to be doing is probably looking outside of at perhaps our own vertical markets, especially if we work in a market that isn't perhaps an early adopter of technology, and maybe looking towards the tech and gaming markets where adoption is rapid. I think the iPhone update download was, they got like 56% faster download than the previous update that they did. So you can see adoption is becoming much more mass market for customers. They're getting used to applications and how to navigate them.
And we've got a final tip here before we hand across. I think it's essential that testing process and training is in place before releasing a new channel. I think it ties into your one about risks. A wait and see and let's just take it how it goes attitude will lose you customers and don't demotivate staff. Have patience rather than adhere to demand. I think it's all too easy in a very demand-led environment like we have not to have quite enough patience all round. Well, I'm going to pass the baton across now to Marianne Miller from New Voice Media, who's going to take us through her thoughts in terms of delivering a personalised omni-channel experience, which I think is going to be very interesting to see how we can personalise the experiences. So Marianne, if you'd like to pop your slides up on the screen and take us through your thoughts.
Great. Thank you very much, Maria. Thank you, Jonty. And I'm loving all the tips coming in from the chat room as well. So thanks, everyone, for your contributions. Now, given how important we're all agreeing it is to get this right, let's look and consider how we might actually do it. I want to look at how we can personalize our interaction and really best meet the needs of that customer who's looking to communicate with us in this omni-channel world. Now the good news is the technology already exists to support this goal, and it's really baffling that relatively few organizations have adopted it when we know that customers are becoming more demanding and more fickle. What are the characteristics of a solution that would enable this way of working? So really for me, there are three different personas involved in this. There's the customer, of course, there's the agent, and there's the business itself. But all three have got different perspectives on omni-channel and on personalization, and because of that they require different tools. So really taking omni-channel first, for the customer it means being able to interact with you on their channel of choice and from any device, and being able to switch channels and stay in the same conversation with you. That's essential. And from the agent's perspective, omni-channel means having social posts, email, live chat and calls all served up to them effortlessly. And for the business, it's really ensuring that you're delivering a consistent experience of the brand regardless of channel. So let's have a think about personalization. You know that you're getting personalization right when the customer really feels they've got a one-to-one relationship with your brand. You're treating them as an individual because you know their likes and their dislikes. But what does a personalized experience look like from the agent's perspective? Well, when the call comes in or an interaction, the agent should already know who they're talking to and what they're calling about. They also need to be presented with the history of your relationship with that customer and the context of the interaction. Now, as a business, it's not just that you need to be able to store all that information in a single record, but you must exploit it in real time at the moment that customer interacts with you. Now, it strikes me that retailers in particular are making a very good job of web personalization. They're presenting me with suitable offers, they're nudging me about what I've left in my cart, but that experience does not typically flow through to the contact center. And I'm really left with an experience of the brand that is entirely inconsistent. I might be spending thousands of pounds with your company, and yet you don't even recognize my telephone number. So better still, let's really pick up on Maria's theme of telepathy. So why not use what you know about the customer to anticipate their needs? So for example, if we know the customer is coming up to a subscription renewal, let's route them to an agent who knows how to process that transaction type. Now that's all perfectly possible today, provided you can leverage the information that you hold about that customer and use it to manage, prioritize and route the interaction optimally. Getting this right gives you the best chance to drive loyalty and advocacy from your customers and to really positively impact that bottom line. Mm-hmm. So in the graphic here, what we're saying in the old world is that you would have had a number of different queues with agents focused on a single interaction type and processing those interactions on a first-come, first-served basis. They don't know who they're dealing with or indeed what the priority might be. And now to make things worse, they are most often handling those different channels in different systems. And this way of working also means that your social media guy could be sat there doing nothing whilst the poor telephone agent sees his queue mounting up, and that's just not good for morale and it's not efficient. No. I mean, who hasn't experienced that disappointment when you've emailed a company and then called to chase the issue only to find that the phone agent can't see your previous interaction? We've all had that, right?
Absolutely.
So it's broken processes like this that are really bad for the customer, they're bad for the agent and they're bad for the brand. Our approach at New Voice Media is to think of an interaction like a parcel, and this is where I really want to thank Amy for her question because it leads in here. We're going to apply a number of different tags based on what we know about the customer from our CRM system, and the tags route and prioritize the interaction to the best possible agent. But if he or she is not available, say after a defined time period, then perhaps we drop off one of the optional tags and open up to a wider skill group of available agents to answer that request promptly. And of course, different channels can have different SLAs. In this example, we've got a French-speaking VIP with an upcoming renewal who has sent us an email and he's got an open case. If the perfect agent for that interaction is not available, And going back to someone else's point, I would say the perfect agent for that interaction is the person he last spoke to on his case. If that person's not available, then let's open up to a wider pool of agents by dropping off one of the optional tags, maybe the email tag. Make sense? So Quintessentially is a lovely brand, and they're really getting personalisation right. They're a lifestyle concierge service, and whether you're looking for tickets to the Grand Prix or a helicopter to take you to a hotel for the weekend, they can sort you out. They've got about 700 agents, all serving very high net worth individuals in multiple languages, and their clients, rightly, expect outstanding customer service. So we've worked with Quintessentially to deliver just that. Now, they operate a no IVR environment. So in most cases, the caller will be recognised by their number, whether that's the mobile, office or home line, and then a screen pop in conjunction with an audible whisper into the agent's ear identifies them to the lifestyle manager, who's then able to greet them and efficiently work with them. And all of this information, all the incoming and outgoing calls are logged automatically in Salesforce, so we've got that complete ongoing customer record. I'm not a member of Quintessentially. I keep thinking it would be rather nice to be.
And it's quite interesting, the no IVR environment, because I see that in so many of the top organisations for customer service.
Yeah.
Is they don't screen calls with an IVR at the entry point.
Absolutely.
Telepathic, don't need to.
Yeah, very good.
First Direct's one that I keep seeing great reviews about, and they came top in the Which poll, didn't they?
Yes.
Yep.
And they have no IVR. And you could of course segment your customers, right? The really high net worth guys, no IVR. Normal people like me, IVR. So let's think about tools. You know, what tools do we really need to deliver this kind of situation and improvement? So I want to think about the agent first. And from an agent's perspective, we want one pane of glass, not swivel chairing between multiple different applications to service a particular interaction. Because of course, you know, we've talked about the silos. I might only be dealing with email or chat, but then I might have 20 applications that I'm trying to manage to really service that call. So getting the experience right for the agent, you know, really reduces your ramp time, it decreases the agent attrition, and moreover, happy agents deliver better customer experiences and feed what Harvard Business Review calls the service profit chain. It's worth looking that up because it's really relevant. So I think we're going to go to a poll now. I'm really curious to know from the attendees on the call, you know, how many applications do your agents have to juggle to service your customers? And I want you to think about everything, because sometimes that even means your own website. You know, do they have to go to your own website to find out that you've put an offer out there that they're not aware of? Do they have to go to Twitter? You know, what are all the applications, the business applications, the web applications, the external applications, what are they using to deliver really exceptional customer service, or hopefully?
So let's have a look at the results that have come through here, and here's the voting. 9% only need to use one or two applications. 31% use 3 to 4, 34% 5 to 9, 22% 10 to 19, and 3% use 20 plus applications. That's a huge number of things there. So you've got a very significant number of the audience using certainly sort of 8 or 9 applications to service a customer.
And I think this really plays to the other side of the customer experience, which is the agent experience, because you know, the two absolutely go hand in hand. And I'm hearing a lot about customer effort, so reducing customer effort to give a better experience. Well, maybe we should be thinking about agent effort. So we've got a customer effort score. Where's the agent effort score?
Yeah,
you know, it would be an interesting one.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's really relevant. So I'm going to just give you an example. This is Woucher. So Woucher is a daily deals site, and they needed a contact center solution really to enable rapid business growth. But what they delivered was a great place to work. And if you're interested, there's a video case study and a written report on our website. If you want to know more, it's there. Now, they enable screen pops to the agents as a call comes in, so that when it comes through, the agent can immediately see everything that's ever been done with that customer. And the agent feedback, certainly if you watch the video, is that it's incredible. They have a 91% advisor satisfaction rate and very low attrition. And I think 25% of calls are resolved in the IVR. Average handling time is down, net promoter scores are up, everyone wins, and this is what I really mean by serving the service profits chain, feeding that service profit chain. I think we've got another, no, we haven't got another poll. Let's look at the tools for the customer. So where it's right to do so, let's let the customer self-serve. What we're looking for, as the corporate exec board calls it, are effortless customer experiences. And if all they want to know is when to expect their delivery, then make that really easily available without having to speak to an agent. We can do that via a self-service IVR. Let's also anticipate their next requirement, and if they just gave us some poor feedback through an automated survey, for example, let's create a case and have a supervisor investigate the call and call them back before this turns out to be a complaint or a tweet. So at that point we do have a poll, and it's really about, do you proactively close the loop on complaints? This is a personal crusade of mine. When I've had an interaction with a company and they ask me to fill out a survey, and I've gone and taken the time to say, do you know what, it wasn't great and you need to improve here, here and here. When you don't close the loop on me, I hate you. It's that simple. I've taken my time, you've done something that didn't, wasn't any good, and you haven't closed the loop. So if you can give us the results for that, that would be great.
So it'd be quite interesting to see the results. So do you ever close the loop on feedback in customer service? Yes, always within an hour. Yes, within 5 days. We often do no or not sure. I've got a friend of mine who always leaves a note in the box saying, please can you contact me about my feedback today? And I think to date he's had 2 phone calls. Not a large number of ones coming back. So let's see what the audience say. Well, only 7% get back to people within the hour, so very little immediacy there. 30% within 5 days, 28% we often do, 18% no, we don't get back to them at all, and 17% not sure. So it seems that there's a possibility, but not a probability. Is that sort of in line with your research?
It's not in line with my personal experiences. I think some of you are fibbing. But maybe I'm only dealing with that 18% of organisations who don't get back to me. But I will try that. I'm going to start saying, please contact me about my feedback.
Yeah, so just hide the results there and pass the baton back to Mary Ann.
Okay, so the next place I want to go is really to look at tools for the business. So when we've got the control back, I shall show my screen. So tools for business. Let's think about never missing a beat. And by that I mean let's capture every interaction with your customer in one place and use it for everyone's benefit. Let's make all agents customer stars. If we give the agents the tools that put them a step ahead of your customer, then they can be seen as a trusted advisor or a guide that really understands them. And let's make sure that you've got the ability to adapt and to evolve faster than your competition. You really don't want to wait 4 weeks to have to pay a third party to change some simple logic in your call plan or your IVR. That's just crazy. This technology has to be easy to manage by the team that are actually using it, and it's got to deliver a fast time to value. It's also got to be easy for the advisors to pick up. And then high performance in a digital world, it means a lot of things, but you've got to be able to see in real time what's working for you. You're combining the CRM and the contact center statistics, and that really is the aha moment. It also means being able to enable new ways of working, whether you're letting people work from home in the contact center or you're overflowing at peak to other sites, and to always be on and really to master the unexpected. Being able to know that you are covered in a DR scenario or if you experience failure demand. So when we think about tools and business and people that have made a big transformation, I always think of DPD. They are a logistics company that are getting just amazing customer feedback right now. If you search any social media sites, you'll see that. And they made a really conscious change from being a transaction or parcel-focused organisation to being really customer-focused. And they had a desire to put the customer first and to be a customer-first organisation, because after all, We all do repeat business with DPD, whether we choose to or not. But how do you shift gears like that and transform the operating model? You know, a parcel recipient can now select their delivery slot. This is amazing to me. And you can have a delivery on a Sunday. I mean, that would, for me, make me choose DPD over anyone else straight away. It's that customer focus, and it's an amazing change in thinking that they've been able to drive by the right tools for the job.
I love with them this. You talk about the anticipation. I quite like it when you get the email saying you've got a parcel by DPD, because they say you're going to get it between 13:28 and 13:47.
Yeah, and if that's not suitable for you,
and then you can check on the map and see where the van is. And I can see it sort of coming up the valley as it gets. You know, you can see it. I'm not like I spend all day tracking where the van is, but I did have a look, and it was quite interesting to see it coming up the valley, and it's, you know, it's 10 miles away, but it's still got 3 hours to go because there's lots of parcels on the way. But you know, that sort of transparent, turning the business on its head, inside out, I think is you know, quite important.
Yeah, so it's a great case study. So look, I can conclude really. The good news is that all of this is achievable today, and what's more, it's not hard. It's the projects are not necessarily measured in years, and we can have a fast time to value if we pick the right things to do. And it's not so much that customers are disloyal to you, it's that they are disappointed and underwhelmed. When they interact with you, they're offering you the chance to make them feel valued, and if you miss that opportunity, they're going to move on. Second thing is, you know, trust that you've hired the right people, because until they prove you wrong, you know, you must let them get on with it, because give them the right tools, empower them, and get out of the way. They're the front line to the customer. They know what's going on. They're in the best place to handle all of this stuff. And getting all of this right not only reinforces the brand values, but it materially impacts the bottom line. So that's my conclusion. I've got a little demonstration, Jonty. Have we got time for that?
I think we're going to jump to some top tips and questions from the audience. So thank you very much for that indeed. I think there's some great points you've got there. Never miss a beat. I love that one. Make sure you log all customer interactions. I did like the bit from Harvard Business Review, so if you can give me the link to that, we'll add that onto the website. And trust that you've hired the right people and give them the right tools to do the job. And I think from Maria's poll earlier on, I think we could see there was an under investment in both training and giving advisors the right tools, which is, I think, what we need to do in this new digital age. So thank you very much for that. We're now going to jump across and have a look at some of the top tips that we've had sent through. We've got quite a number coming through. It's #tip if you want to leave a tip. Simon says you can counteract resources to handle demand as a risk as long as you've skilled up to meet demand based on previous instant volumes in a phased rollout. You should be able to manage it effectively because you're not introducing new instance requests, so that the demand won't change. It will just come from a different angle. So I think there's a role for, you know, once you can log everything, you can then start to forecast on it. Yes. It may not be as high as you think because you've probably got that pent-up demand. Like you had the case of you send in an email and then you have a phone call. So you've actually got the demand is already repeated. So if you bring in a new channel that can deal with it, you may actually be starting to cut down on demand.
And it's interesting, isn't it? You know, workforce management tools seem largely to operate in isolation, and yet if you could bring that in as part of the contact center solution, now you can inform it with what's really going on with all of the channels.
And here's one that ties very much into your never miss a beat. Frederick says, make sure you have one contact log for all channels and try to make it visible for other departments that meet the customer, like local branches, which I think is something we sometimes put all the tools into the contact center and forget about the branches.
That's an interesting one actually, because a brand I've been working with, we've put Twitter into their stores. So we've now got little kind of Twitter fires going on, and seeing some of the customer behaviour migrate to their local store, and they love being able to tweet about different products with their local store rather than within a kind of an anonymous contact center.
Kate says, asking customers why they use the channel they did helps us understand which channels are best for different types of questions. So you can guide people to that particular channel. Jean says, I think after a customer contacts the service centre, it's imperative an exit survey is sent so that you can continually monitor how you're being received and what areas of improvement are needed. I think that's certainly very important, providing, as your point earlier, Marianne,
you've got to close the loop.
Close the loop and ideally close the loop effectively. So, certainly some contact centres that send that feedback back to the advisor and the supervisor on an immediate basis. People go, oh, actually, it sinks in a lot more if it's immediate rather than if it comes 5 days later. Kate says train team members to do one channel at a time, so they get to really know to make it work before you give them the next one to learn. There's a danger perhaps we jump in too fast. You want to keep good people and not scare them off. Steve says teach your agents to use your own website, mobile app, etc., so they can guide customers through it effectively.
Good one.
I certainly like it where the companies that have a knowledge base have the same knowledge base for customers and for agents, because then your customers get the latest stuff because it's more easily spotted and corrected. And Amy says, I think an advanced CRM system helps us deliver a consistent customer service approach. Our system collects the information from all channels in one central database. Therefore, as soon as the customer contacts us through any means, we can see all contact from us and them and vice versa, and they feel a lot more care has gone into their query. So I think this is linking you'll never miss a beat into the CRM system, so you're not only logging it, but you're actually sharing that.
And Burberry have got a great example of that. If you go into a Burberry store, you're greeted by an advisor who's holding an iPad which has a clienteling app on it. They've got access straight through into the CRM. They know what you left in your basket. They know what you like, what your interactions with Burberry have been.
Wow, is that done on face recognition software? Is it always they're going to ask you who you are first?
I think they need to ask you who you are at this point, but beacon technology is coming, isn't it, which I think is going to make that a lot easier.
Yeah, we'll make it a lot easier.
So we've got a couple of audience opinions. It's easy to say you have to follow the customer channel need. The complexity of product or service you provide as a key influence. A complex technical product could be difficult to diagnose over a chat compared to a walkthrough over the phone. I think there is a potentially
Yeah, I mean, depending on the type of problem, I've seen co-browse technology starting to come through as well. So if we're talking about, how do I resolve a problem with my laptop, perhaps co-browsing would be a good way to leap off from that live agent chat.
And I think it's about also understanding the customer's goal and then serving up, the channel that's probably going to get their problem or their goal achieved in the best way possible.
So here's an interesting question from John. Have there been any studies about the use of two channels at the same time, e.g. voice and co-browse? Often the talk is about one channel and moving channels, whereas I believe that the use of more than one channel at a time would be more rewarding for customers and businesses.
That's a really that's a very, very interesting point, I think. I don't know if you've got any stats on it, Marianne, but when I was at Spotify, we did quite a lot of work around Skype, and in fact, and kind of integrating Hangouts in the community. So we were able to kind of talk to customers, chat to them, and also sort of have the parts of the contact center hanging out with some of the customers as well, particularly around sort of complex technical or product inquiries. So I think it's a great point, yeah.
And I've certainly seen Salesforce at their Dreamforce conference and elsewhere do some quite spectacular demonstrations involving Google Glass. So someone is actually seeing, what's going on and interacting through two channels at once. Absolutely.
Okay, well, I'm afraid that's all we've got time for today. Just before we go, in one or two words, please could you tell us what you liked best about today's webinar? If you could just one or two words in the chat room, what you liked best about today's webinar. There will be slides available on our webinar page. That's callcenterhelper.com/recorded webinars. There will also be a link to the replay, and a blog post will be sent out to you from New Voice Media with a summary of what we've talked about. And if you want to share the webinar with your management team or with the rest of your team, it's going to be available later on this afternoon through the same link as you've dialed in today, or through our recorded webinar, page. We will be coming back to Basingstoke in the new year to look at 10 predictions for 2015, so you can register for that one if you like. We'll send you a reminder earlier in the new year. So just remains for me to thank you to our two presenters. Maria McCann, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thanks, John T. Thanks for having me.
And to Mary Ann Miller, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
And thank you to everyone in the audience who's dialed in today. Thank you very much for your time, and look forward to speaking with you next week. Bye-bye, everyone. Bye-bye.